pretty damn good when you get that many sergeant majors to stand up for a buck sergeant. But, you know, you trained me. So I want to first thank you. Thank you for an opportunity this morning to say hello and take a few minutes to share some thoughts about what you're doing and what we're all doing, the future of our country, how important your leadership has been, how important your leadership is going to be. First, I want to thank Sergeant Major DeFries for the introduction and for his guiding hand of this institution, which is important an institution in our military establishment as any one institution. You all know well that the enlisted corps of our military is often referenced as the backbone. It's a lot of appendages. It's a lot of pieces. But without that enlisted corps, without the sophistication and the commitment and the discipline and the focus, and I not intentionally leave out humanity, but the humanity of it is important as well, and I want to address that part of your responsibilities here in a moment. But to be in this institution at this time is a great privilege for me. I want to also thank General Twitty for his leadership. I know the General is very comfortable with all these sergeant majors here in the room, and I appreciate you giving him a visa to come and sit in with you. So thank you, General, for what you continue to do for our country and your important leadership. Congressman O'Rourke, thank you very much for what you do and your commitment to these tremendous men and women and their families who serve this country. I know we have representatives here from Senators Heinrich's office and Udall's office, so thank you as well for what you do. And the mayor of El Paso, Mayor Leeser, thank you. We are grateful for your leadership. And I know Mr. Dayoub is here from the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for what you do to continue to enhance this community. Then also look out for our men and women who are assigned here. I recall my days here well, and I think all of you who have served here in any capacity at any time recall that as you go into the summer in the desert, it's, and especially basic training, a very enriching experience. I might say enlightening. When you are referenced not by your name but by other superlatives, in those days, I know we don't do that anymore, but drill sergeants in 1967 were not as humane as I know all of you are. And it's enlightening and enhancing and educational when you are often asked, how dumb are you? How could you be so stupid? And that's a hard one to answer, actually, when you try to work your way through that. But the experience I had here in basic training, and my brother Tom was 4 weeks behind me, really was a defining time. And the rest of my service in the Army did very much define me. And I don't know anyone who isn't defined by service in uniform. It's not the only service, and you all know that and appreciate that. There are many ways to serve this country, and thank goodness we have many people who do serve in many different capacities. But serving your country in uniform is a pretty special endeavor, and it's a particularly special commitment. And a couple of things I wanted to share this morning with you, mainly based on what I have learned as a result of my time associated with our military and their leaders, men and women who serve this country. That began, as I said, 48 years ago, right here, when I arrived on a train at 6 o'clock in the morning in late April 1967. And then the things that have happened to me the last 48 years and the opportunities I've had to serve in different capacities really did begin here. As I worked through different courses and then ultimately in Vietnam in 1968 for a year, and then was out of the Army. But I've never been too far from the Army, never been far from veterans, and always been able the last 40 years to be fortunate enough to be connected in some way to our servicemen and women and their families and veterans. And that has given me dimensions of personal satisfaction and gratification that I have never known in any other way. This institution, this academy, as I noted, and you all know, represents so much of who we are. In fact, it's the entire enterprise, the defense enterprise, and each service has its own, I know, chiefs and sergeant majors. Academy as it should be. But embodied here is a special spirit. And leadership is one of those great things that you can write volumes and volumes about. What do you learn at leadership institutions, and how do you become a sergeant major, a command sergeant major, how do you become a general? You can't really teach that. You know that. And I've always thought that as the volumes and volumes and hundreds of thousands of documents and essays and books and interviews, millions over the years have been written and spoken about leadership, it really comes down to a couple of things, in my opinion. One is responsibility, and two is judgment. Now you have to have knowledge, you have to be aware, you have to know what you're doing. That's a pretty foundational component of anything. But in the end, what you're called upon to do ultimately in these critically important positions is to exercise responsibility and good judgment. You can't teach that. That's at least my opinion after 48 years of doing a lot of things. It's an accumulation of experiences, of knowledge, of commitment, of what you want to do, starting with who you are and what you believe, and your willingness to commit yourself to those standards that you set first for yourself. And then the institution sets standards for you. And if you're willing to comply and attempt at fulfilling those high standards first for yourself, and then second for the institution, then you'll have something to offer others. You'll have something to say. And that's really the beginning of responsibility. And then that develops into judgment. So many line calls all the time. And you can't go to a textbook. You can't go to a former instructor. You can ask for advice, but in the end, it's your responsibility to make the call, to make the judgment. And that is an accumulation of many things. Those are the two essentials, in my opinion, that define leadership. That's particularly important, I believe, today at the beginning of 2015, because we are living at a very defining time in the world. Every day is different, every year is different, every day defines something. Yesterday is gone. We can't do anything about yesterday. We can't do a hell of a lot about today, actually. we can do something about tomorrow. And how we define tomorrow, how we define our institutions, how do we define everything that we know is right and we believe in, and how do we prepare our institutions and the next class and the next class and the next group of sergeants majors, those who will have responsibilities that will come after you. How do you prepare them? That also is part of responsibility, and that also feeds into judgment, because that ultimately is one of the greatest responsibilities of leadership, is preparing an institution for the future. We have been trying to do that the last couple of years in Washington since I've been Secretary of Defense, not only in the technological edge of assuring that our technical capabilities do not erode, as we have had to deal with severe budget issues over the last couple of years, which you all have been part of and had to maneuver and engage and navigate, and you've done it incredibly well. But also other demands and factors and defining dynamics in a world that is now partly intimidated by the immediacy of everything, the immediacy of judgments, the immediacy of we want an answer now. And there's where judgment especially comes into play. I have believed, and as I have worked my way along the last 48 years in different jobs, that especially today, but I think it's probably been true through history, that sometimes there are not immediate answers to problems. We Americans contest that. We fight that. Well, of course there's an answer to the problem. We'll fix it. Let's go to war. Let's commit troops. Or let's present a policy to address that problem. There's an answer to it. Many times we find that the problem, the challenge, the issue, can only be solved through an evolving process of solutions, ultimately getting to the high ground of resolution. That's the kind of world we're living in. Look at the Middle East today. The Middle East is captive to being now in the grips of historical differences, tribal, religious, ethnic. That's not the only challenge, that's not the only force that's driving Islamic fundamentalism and terrorism and these ideologies that have nothing to do with religion, that are brutal, murderous, irresponsible. That's not religion. But yet, the divisions and the lines of those divisions as to how they started and how they perpetuate, much rooted in religious or ethnic differences. There's not one answer to that. I think there are evolving solutions, which we are helping play a role in that. But we can't fix that. The United States of America can't fix that problem. No country outside that region can fix that problem. It will be the people themselves who will ultimately have to come to some resolution through a process of evolving solutions to fix it. The world will be presented more and more with those kinds of issues, where responsible leadership will always end up having to rely on responsible judgment. And how do we deal with these problems? We are the one nation on earth that has commitments not only to our own security, as every nation's first priority is its own security, but we have obligations, responsibilities to treaty partners, to institutions around the world, Certainly, it is in our interest. But that's a burden. That's a heavy burden to carry. And I have noted before, when I was in the Senate, I talked about this issue, that this is an issue that the American people are going to have to deal with on the basis of how much burden they want to carry, why it's important, if it's important. And I have come to the conclusion that as unfair as some of this is to the United States, because we carry the burden, we pay the highest price. We could have a different world, that's right. But when you think of it in terms of your children and your grandchildren, do they want a world where America is weaker and the next great powers will not be near as judicious and responsible with its power as America has been with her power? That does not at all escape the reality that America has made mistakes. Every nation makes mistakes, individuals make mistakes. But we have blundered when we have tried to force issues and tried to force answers on other people, with the virtue always of trying to help. We can help you, we can fix the problem. So that's my point about not every problem has an immediate answer. We have to be smart about that, especially in this kind of a world that is so hair-triggered, where there's very little margin of error. There is little time, and we've got to be smart in how we use the time to make the kinds of decisions that will last. Decisions, as we all know, have consequences. Actions have consequences. Inaction, doing nothing, has consequences. And that's a tough balance to maintain in a complicated world of 7 billion people. And as I have noted before, demographers say we will be at 9 billion in the next 25 years. And when we think of the new complications that will present to our world, it's especially important now that we have leaders, as I have noted, as we go through this very defining time, because I think we are building a new world order in this defining time. We've not seen disruptions in the world order like we are seeing today since World War II. World War II, a new world order was built after World War II. We led that effort. It's worked pretty well. And we look at the trouble spots in the world today, those are areas that were left behind after World War II. They did not benefit from human dignity, respect, freedom, opportunities, education, market economies. And consequently, those parts of the world are engaged in intense conflict today. So at the same time, we should not eliminate or overlook or disregard or underappreciate the good that's come out of that world order after World War II. No World War III, no nuclear exchange. Pretty remarkable, quite frankly. A time of the last 70 years when there has been relatively considerable stability in the world. Now, we've had Vietnam, we've had crises, we've had ups and downs, absolutely. But we have always been able, we being the United States with our partners, to contain it enough. Not fix the problems. Some problems have been fixed, but to contain it enough. We are living now at a time coming at the end of that post-World War II world order. Technology has driven a tremendous amount of that, but it probably started with the implosion of the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union blew apart finally in 1991, that changed the entire equation of balance of power and geopolitics in the world. And from that moment on, things started to change and shift. We are now at I think, that second inflection point since World War II. So what we're doing today, what is coming, and it isn't going to be just in 2015 or 2014 or 2013, the last 2 years, but these next few years will define a world order. That world order, I think, will be up and down. It will be inconsistent. It won't be like what we saw in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, I don't believe. That means that we have to prepare this institution in ways we have never had to prepare it. And much of that will fall on you in your command positions as you take your new responsibilities. I want to just mention in closing, because I want to get some questions. In my office in Washington, hanging behind my desk, and I have asked the last 6 Secretaries of Defense if those pictures, those paintings were there when they were there, and they were. Paintings of 2 individuals, Dwight Eisenhower and George Marshall. And I think through 7 Secretaries of Defense, no one has dared touch those paintings. Lightning would strike if we did. But it reminds me every day of the kind of insightful, responsible leadership and judgment that this country was fortunate enough to have after World War II, that helped shape this new world order. Those 2 individuals, there were many others, of course, and many others came from this institution, our military enterprise. But those 2 in particular had a tremendous reach into the future and could see what kind of institution we were going to need and what kind of people, because people run it all. I mean, we can have the technological edge and the partner capabilities that we're building and have been building, innovations and initiatives that I started in the last 2 years, and the reviews of our nuclear enterprise, our military healthcare system reviews. All those things need to constantly be reviewed and processed and updated. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done over the last 2 years in order to do that, put some of these things back on track, move in the right direction, and change many of the things that needed changed. But these 2 individuals really were, I think, the anchors for this country the last 70 years as we refer back to them. Curriculum at West Point, here, curriculum everywhere, refer back to Marshall and Eisenhower. And I want to just read you very briefly a quote. I know you have heard this, but it's a quote from Eisenhower that I had hanging in my office in Washington when I was in the United States Senate for 12 years. And it comes back and really ties, in my opinion, together the points that I've made here the last few minutes about responsibility. That the essence of leadership is responsibility and judgment. And this is a quote, and you all know, which was never used, thank goodness, handwritten note that Dwight Eisenhower had written and put in his pocket in the event of a failure at Normandy. I know you have all heard it. It's probably taught in all of our military classrooms. But he wrote this note, put it in his pocket, and was prepared to release it in the event the landings in Normandy had failed. And this is the quote: "Our landings have failed, and I have withdrawn the troops. My decision to attack at this time and place was based upon the best information available. The troops, the air, and the Navy did all that bravery and devotion to duty could do. If any blame or any fault attaches to this effort, it is mine alone." Now that's responsible leadership. And I think what Eisenhower did and said and was prepared to release immediately, if Normandy had failed, is a guiding principle of leadership for all of us in every institution and in our lives. Responsibility and judgment. And in both cases, Eisenhower did exactly what great leaders do. And I know you all value responsible leadership and judgment, and you have seen it. You know the difference. You all started, I suspect, as E1s. When you start, as General Twitty started as an O1, and when you start at those levels, as you should, because you're not worthy of command unless you understand every step of the way, and you've lived every step of the way. Then you start to appreciate, as you develop leaders, and you see leaders, you know leaders, you know why you respect them, and you know how you want to emulate the good ones, and even the great ones. And you have been role models to a lot of people, and you're going to continue to be role models to a lot of people. That too carries a heavy burden, maybe as heavy as anything, is being role models to people, others who will come in behind you and look to you as examples of the kind of leaders that they want to be. Well, I thank you. I thank you for your service. I thank you for your commitment to this country, and I want to thank in particular your families. I know sacrifices that families make is very, very significant and difficult. And families deserve a tremendous amount of acknowledgement and recognition and thanks for what they have to endure, so that you can do the things that you do that are so important for this country. I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud to have been part of this institution. So thank you.